iPhone is probably not a good example when you want to talk about different units of measure. A better example probably is Coke. Coke is manufactured in, let's say, gallons, and it can be sold in different units of measure. It can be sold in cans, 6-pack, fridge pack, or it can be sold in 1.5 gallons, and so on. See, these are all sales units of measures, and this is the manufacturing unit. And Coke, for example, if it's purchasing, which it might not, it might be purchasing in pallets. And each pallet is so many gallons of Coke. So this is the purchasing unit. And when you maintain different units, you have to maintain the conversion between them, meaning one purchasing unit of pallet is equal to how many gallons? 1000 gallons. So we are maintaining a conversion between a purchasing unit and a manufacturing unit. And of course, you have to maintain the conversion between the manufacturing unit and the different sales units and purchasing units. That way, the whole process of creating orders and receiving them and manufacturing the same goods is kind of transparent in terms of how many you want or how many you want to manufacture, because there is a clear conversion between the different units of measure. So like I said, just in case if you want to maintain a different unit of measure, I don't know, a box, you will have to maintain the respective conversion. Now we'll talk about conversion as soon as we hit enter. And next is the delivering plant. Remember the example of iPhone changing the delivering plant from San Francisco to Los Angeles. This is the plan. This is the field. So if you want to change it, right now I've set the delivering plant to 1200. If you want to change it to 1000, that's fine. You can change it. The next field is the distribution chain status. So this is the discontinued thing I was talking about. Are you going to discontinue it? Yeah, sure. If you want to discontinue it from a certain time, you can do it here. But we're going to do it in the change mode. And this is the tax classification. You can either tax it or not tax it, depending on the material. And we have talked about tax classification in the customer master, remember? A customer can be taxable or a customer need not be taxable. That would depend on the nature of the business transaction, nature of the customer, resale certificates, so on and so forth. In the case of a material, some materials are not taxable. For example, service in the US is not taxable. So if it's a service, yeah, the tax classification is 0. Another example is a research material, right? Like some genetic material or whatever. If the government wants to promote it, then they don't tax it. So you can have that. So it depends on the nature of the material and the nature of the transaction. So for now, let's just put the tax classification as 1, which means it's taxable. And of course, we have minimum order quantity and minimum delivery quantity. Minimum order quantity is the minimum quantity of goods that the customer can order. Now, in the case of an Apple, you have 2 types of sales. Apple sells to end consumers like you and me, in single units. So you can go to apple.com, buy one iPhone. And the price you're going to get is whatever the unit price is. Now, Apple also sells to companies like Singular or AT&T or T-Mobile and so on. And when they sell it to them, they have a different price and a different agreement altogether. And Singular cannot just order one iPhone, right? He has to order a certain minimum amount. In that case, you can set a minimum order quantity here. Now remember, it's not based on the customer group or the type of customer. It applies to everybody. So if you have a minimum order quantity regulation, it could be either by law or it could be either by principle that applies to everybody, every customer. You can specify it here. Minimum order quantity is 10 and same with minimum delivery quantity. Right? Hit enter. And this is where the system is saying one box is equal to how many pieces? Because a box could have n number of pieces. That would depend on what kind of box your company has, right? So one box of iPhone could have like 10 pieces of iPhone. Remember our Coke example? One fridge pack of or box of Coke is going to have 12 pieces of Coke or 10 pieces of Coke. And any different kind of unit of measure that you use to define the material has to have the corresponding conversions declared. Okay, moving on. You hit enter to move on always. This is very, very important. You can just go and click on that respective tab, or you can just go and go to this little drop down and click on the tabs. But it's always better to hit enter because you have already selected the tabs and it will go in that order without getting confused. All right. This view is not all that important at this point, but in the next chapter, when we talk about product hierarchy or material groups, we'll know more about why this tab is there. So just skip this tab. And in this tab, there are two important fields called transportation group and loading group. Again, we are not going to focus on any of these because we'll know the significance of these fields when we do shipping, deliveries, and shipping point determination and so on. For now, you can just ignore them and just put them standard values. Hit enter. And then we have MRP. Again, we're not going to bother too much about MRP. Just put ND, which means no planning. Hit OK. And storage conditions, just hit OK. Doesn't matter what's going on there. Finally, we have accounting. In accounting, there are two fields that are important. The first is what is called as a valuation class. Now, for a particular material type, this set of valuation classes is fixed. And that's done by the finance department. So you don't have to worry too much. Just select the right valuation class. And also, anyway, it's the finance department that takes care of this view. So we don't have to bother too much. Price control is also a property of the material that's set by the finance department. But we have to understand this a little bit. There are two types of price control. One is standard, next is moving average. You have to understand what is the difference between a standard and moving average. Let me go back to my slide and we'll see what is standard versus moving average. This is used in purchasing to evaluate a material. And when you look at the word price, don't confuse it with the sales price. It's the purchasing price. So what is valuation? If I have a home and I'm selling everything, if I want to sell everything and I want to estimate how much property I have, so I'll start counting everything. I'll start counting the value of the house. I'll start counting the inventory in my house. What kind of inventory do I have? I have a freezer. I have some golf clubs. I have some clothing. Let's say I'm just selling everything and leaving town and going to, God knows, Australia. Right? So I kind of car and everything. I kind of evaluate everything. And what do I evaluate it at? At the price that it currently can be sold at, or at the price that I have acquired it. Now, a car depreciates with time, so I can't really value it at the price that I have acquired it at. So I can only evaluate it at the price that I can sell it at. Right now, I can sell this car for 20K. Okay, all right. My inventory car value is 20K. But imagine a factory. A factory has inventory. So if you want to manufacture iPhone, there is a panel, the LCD panel, and there's a case, and there's some audio circuitry. There's so many different things. So a panel costs $12. A case costs $10. And there are how many panels? There are, let's say, 100,000 panels in inventory, because you're going to make so many iPhones anyway. And there are 100,000 cases. Now, how do I identify whether I have... So how do I know that my panel costs $12 a piece? That has to be maintained in the material master. If I know that the value of an iPhone panel, that the acquired cost of it is $12 because I manufacture it, you can just put it in the material master, like I said, here, using standard price, and say the price is $12. But if you acquire a panel from 3 different vendors, let's say vendor 1 is selling it at $10, vendor 2 is selling it at $8, vendor 3 is selling it at $13. Now what's the cost price of this panel? It's a weighted average of all the 3 different prices. And do I have to do it every time? No. SAP spares us that problem and just says set it to moving average and I'll automatically take care of the cost price. So it does a moving average of all these and sets the price to some value. Those are the 2 types of valuation that you do in the material. These are the only types of valuation. So for now, I'm just going to stick with iPhone 200 is my cost price, and I'm going to set it to standard price. And click OK. Now it says we are done with all the views. Last data screen reached. You're about to exit. Okay. Click yes, and your material iPhone-5 is saved.